all of the services that you need to perform and operate. When you look at the state of Indiana, we are one of the best tax environments for businesses, period. Yet we're still losing out on a lot of jobs out there. And we lose out on those jobs because all these corporations come back and they say, the quality of life is not what we want. We don't have these parks or these trails. So now you see all these trail initiatives coming through the state where you can apply for grant money. Your roads are terrible. Well, now you have all this road funding that's coming into play. And it sounds earlier that there was an error by your county. And that may be someplace that you want to talk about a lawsuit, because I'm assuming that you paid your engineer to perform a service, and that service was not provided, it sounds like to me. I mean, but that's another thing that you're going to have to think about and get to the information and discuss and make a decision on. But that's more the typical thing of, we have this contract, we paid you X dollars, you did not fulfill that contract, now you owe us money. But when you have that environment where there's less and less money that's coming to you municipalities, you guys are faced with a tough decision as to where do we put those dollars. We've got to provide basic services to our community. We have to pave roads. We have to make sure things still operate within the town, or else you'll start to lose residents and you'll lose your tax base. And you know, in the olden days, prior to 2008, every year municipalities had what was the new money, because the levy automatically increased and then your collection went up. So you had additional funds every year as a municipality, unless you lost a lot of territory or a big employer in your community that went out. That's just not the case, and that's not where we are. What's happening is the state is controlling more and more of it. I mean, even this disbursement that you talked about earlier about from the local option income tax, that's municipal money anyway. I mean, that's local taxes that should have come back. Yet what Indianapolis did was they kept it because there was one community who spent it improperly. And so they kept it there, and then they had all of this money sitting in Indianapolis, and they realized we've got to do something with it. Oh, our roads are bad. We'll give you the money that was yours that you could have used to do whatever you wanted to do with it, but now we're going to limit you that all of this, or 75% of this, has to be used on roads. I mean, that's what's coming out of Indianapolis, and that's what makes it hard to sit in the seats that you do, because you have to make those decisions as to what are we going to put our resources at. You are not a for-profit business. You are not in the business of generating revenues. You can't, and you are limited by statute as to how you can generate revenues. And so you have to work within those tax dollars that you get, or those special distributions that you get, to fund the projects you need to fund, whether that be a lawsuit or not. And so that's, I mean, I can't answer that question for you. That's you guys looking at your budgets, looking at what your available income is, because the other thing you have that always makes it difficult, and I'm sorry I'm going on like this, but you know, in your budget, you put dollars in certain line items in certain funds. Some of those funds cannot be spent on other areas of the law. And so you're limited as to those funds. So maybe you have some left over in local road and street, well, guess what? You can't transfer that into your contractual services line item to pay for a lawsuit or to pay for something else. You got to use it on that. You may have funds sitting out there, and it may be a situation in which you wish you could have taken that, but you can't because of the statutes. So if you want to look at a lawsuit type situation that's going to be an extremely contested lawsuit, it may be a situation in which, as you're sitting here looking at your budget, okay, let's cut a little bit from here, let's cut a little bit from here, let's cut a little bit from here, and place that into our contractual services line item with the anticipation that that money is going to be spent on going down this route of litigation or something of that nature. I haven't looked at your budget, I don't know, but in most cases, municipalities don't have a lot of money that they can cut from different areas. There's some locations that are a little bit better off because they have riverboats, and so they get riverboat money, and they can use that any way that they want to. So it's, I mean, there's no easy answer to this. It's issues that municipalities are dealing with across the state, but I can tell you that it doesn't help you at all when you don't get the large grant funding that came through this last round. I mean, I was at Sheridan last night for their meeting, and we had a $383,000 check for roads. Big, nice printed out. I mean, I wish that they would not spend the money on these big, huge cardboard checks for this big display and keep that money and distribute that to municipalities. I mean, they would help. But, I mean, it is what it is. And you know, there aren't any easy answers here.
I appreciate you explaining it that way, because that's kind of, and you guys are the council. If you want to sue, you vote on that, whatever. But as the clerk, that's what I'm trying to explain, is that, you know, the carryover that we do have took us 10 years to get. So my fear is we spend it on a lawsuit and we get nothing. I mean, we've talked about our risks already, and our risks are very, we've talked about our risks already. So my fear is we spend all that money, you know, just to go to court, proof point, whatever, and we lose. And then that's money that it will take us 10 more years to build up that we could have spent on the department that we now have. So that's where I'm looking at it from a financial side of it. I'm the clerk, I'm not a council member, so.
I have a question I need answered for me. I was one of the people involved in this, starting this territory. Set the territory aside, set the tax money aside. Forget about any money associated with the fire territory. How can another unit come to our property, steal it, and refuse to give it back, when we can prove without a doubt that that was our property? I mean, if that's the case, I'm not gonna buy a new backhoe. I'm gonna go to Arcadia and steal John's.
But we let them have it, so.
We did not let them have it. That is my issue. They came and snuck in there and took all the shit. We did not let them have it. Everybody keeps saying we let them have it.
Well, Todd was there.
No, Todd was not there. This all happened, you know, I called Johnny, Johnny called Steve White, and I said, hey, they're over here taking shit, and he says, he called him, oh no, they're just having a special training. They were stealing our stuff. So, I mean, forget the territory money, forget the tax amount, forget all that. Why can't we get our stuff back that we bought, we owned before this territory started, so this guy can run a fire department to save our life?
I mean, the first thing that I would have done in that situation, and I don't know when that occurred or how that happened.
Last year.
Is, you know, get a report on file with the prosecutor's office or the sheriff to detail that. I mean, and depending upon how much there is there, maybe it's time to, I mean, we could reach out to the sheriff and discuss this, get a report, and maybe let them take that through the criminal system, because you're talking about theft at that point. Now, you do have civil theft statutes, so they make you are allowed to bring a civil case for a criminal act that occurred to you, but it's still going to be a lawsuit. You have to file that as a civil claim and incorporate that statute in under the civil criminal statute that you can do that with, to then bring that action. And so you end up at the same place that way. If you want to try and defer it to at least get that stuff back, maybe it is a thing with the sheriff's department. But
right, this is the first time I'm hearing of somebody sneaking on the property and stealing stuff.
What did they take? Because wasn't it?
They took our air packs, they took our turnout gear, they took our radios. I mean, they took our whole fire truck and took it down there and took stuff off of it they wanted and kept it for 3 days and then brought it back. I mean,
without the stuff on there?
Yes, they stole our stuff. And this is what I've been beating my head about for over a year. I mean, forget about tax money, forget about the territory. They stole our stuff that we owned before they were ever involved. And stuff that people, you know, had fundraisers for, people got grants for, that took this town years to get. And now we get our legs cut off and this guy can't even run a fire department.
Do you have a list of those
Yes,
items?
we have a capital asset book. Yes, we do.
No.
Well, here's the issue.
What do you mean?
Some things we
We
have,
went through
but
this, some of the
anything
stuff we
under
had,
5,000 we don't
other
have.
stuff we didn't. There's
Well,
another
but
issue,
there's-
which is when you
well-
form the fire territory, you put in a pool,
No, we didn't.
all three, put in a pool saying this is territory assets.
No, we didn't.
This is not territory asset, this remains here.
No, we didn't.
What we don't have is those lists.
We did not put all of our stuff in a
I didn't say you
pool.
put all of it. I
Okay.
said you put some of
We
it.
didn't put any of it. No.
Well, see, we don't have any of that information, because the interlocal.
We didn't put any of it in any
Everybody
pool.
signed says, we have certain assets that we all pulled in together.
We kept
and
our
those are
assets.
shared assets. Well, you couldn't have, because in order to form the territory, you had to disband the fire department.
They didn't
You
have
couldn't
it.
have kept
Our
it.
stuff stayed here.
That doesn't mean it wasn't
It-
transferred over to the territory, so
Right, so
those are the issues.
when fire territories occur, what happens is you merge different
I'm
units.
fully aware. I know.
But you keep certain firehouses open because you need to be able to respond to
Yes.
those. And so while the equipment may have stayed here, it may have been fire territory equipment once it's formed. But
It was used by members of the territory, ran from our station. We, unlike them, maintained our own station. We paid for our own trucks. We paid for all of our own stuff while our trustee spent money like a drunken sailor doing everything to her fire station. And we maintained our fire station ourselves.
But they picked up a lot of that's where it gets fuzzy. They picked up the maintenance on this equipment, they picked up the insurance on everything, so
The utilities.
they paid the utilities, so.
All of them.
That list you're talking about, Manny, where everybody contributes to the territory, that list that you can acquire without a lawsuit?
So I've never seen that before.
And
That's the
number two-
first thing to
Well, there's
get
a
is,
Okay.
hey,
How do you
where
know
is this
that,
information?
that list, who's to prove that list is accurate? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, right, but that's
Who
exactly,
determines that?
the issue, Toby, is in
Steve-
a lawsuit,
Steve
we
White
have to
made the
find
list.
all that information out. And we've had public records requests where we got 2,000 documents, and that wasn't one of them.
Okay,
So,
I get you.
whether it was done, I don't know, whether it was accurate, if it was done, I don't know. All that stuff, and that's the problem, that's the real problem with the lawsuit, is all that stuff needs to come out. And then, if those documents don't exist, God forbid, then it's just one side versus the other, and the judge going, I don't know.
So if Steve White had it, then what are the chances of it still existing?
He's been,
I mean, is that
I
something?
think it still exists.
Yeah, and again, it's,
How would you
it's,
get it?
it's something that you could get through a lawsuit, or it's something that we can push them on the public records request. And that's another thing that obviously we can discuss in executive session. That's a way to do it, is to push on those public records requests and post somebody up there every time you can and get copies made. But again, Toby, you're absolutely right. You have no idea whether the list at the time it was made was accurate, because you need the people who made it to authenticate that that was in fact a list. That's another thing you have to do when you present to a judge. You have to say, you can't just say, here's a list, Judge, we think this is it. You have to say, here's a list, and he was here when the list was made, and he can attest to the fact that it was the authentic list, and that everything on there was true.
there's something like that, if that was done, there would be like a legal seal or something on that document stating.
Not necessarily.
So then if you even had access to that list, you still have to prove
You have to
it.
prove it
That it's
was,
authentic.
you have to authenticate it.
And somebody
Exactly.
just didn't make it up.
Exactly. You have to put somebody on the stand that was there and say, do you recognize this list? Yes. Do you recognize making this list? Were you participating in making this list? Are all the items, do you remember all the items that were on this list? You have to go through that whole process. That's part of the issue.
If I
Then you gotta
could-
figure out what was fire territory property, what was retained by Arcadia, what was retained by the township. You know, it becomes,
If I could ask a question about your comment earlier about the emails. If I email some town information to the board, usually there's 5 of us, and we, send it to all, is that accessible to as a public record?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
From your
And it
town
does-
email or your private email.
it doesn't matter where it comes from.
If it is discussing town business, it is accessible. And so when an open door request or a request for public information is
Yeah,
made.
I wasn't even aware of that, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, and it, The problem is that changes all the time, because you have a public access counselor who is appointed to a position, and that individual is responsible for interpreting what the statute is. Now, when that statute was written, there was no such thing as email, right? And so now it's how does email come into play in this? So now we look at his opinions as it's come out. Well, you know, if you send it to this one guy, then it's not, but if it's a quorum that's receiving it, then it is. I mean, it's crazy. Jody Woods from AIM, who's the general counsel for AIM, which took over for IACT, or rebranded from IACT, it drives her nuts because she gets calls every day from attorneys who are representing towns to say, what does this mean? And she's like, but what day of the week is it? Because it can change. But one thing that's been consistent is if you've got a quorum on that email and it's discussing town business, one, that's a public meeting, and two, it's discoverable through an open door request.
Can I ask a question? If I send something, personal email, and I've done this since, to notify if I've hit a roadblock or something, I really shouldn't do that then, should I?
No.
And what does that do on my personal email side? I mean, they could come in, confiscate that, I mean.
Well, no, go ahead, because I've dealt with this, both of us have a ton, and it got really sensitive when I got a public records request for a board I represented, and we had two people from Lilly on it. And they were sending through their Lilly account all this public information. And so they would essentially request this information, and you would have to go through your personal account, and then to make sure it's not privileged, to make sure it's responsive, you have to have me look at it, or somebody else in our office. So that was a problem for her, and for the Lilly attorneys, when I said, hey, I need to look at this to make sure it's okay, they go, yeah, no, you're not, because she's higher up and she has a bunch of information that is confidential, you're absolutely not looking at it, we will look at it. So it becomes a problem, and they can request that information. So no, they wouldn't confiscate your account.
Everybody sitting in here, should we all have town email addresses? Would that help?
You can, yeah, or keep a separate email address just for town business. That's fine.
But
we're
still, you cannot communicate.
Right, you can't.
Regardless.
Exactly.
With a quorum of you, no.
With all of you on it, it's not advisable, but you can communicate with each other. I mean, it's how you're gonna do business. I mean, that's how we all do business. So having a separate kind of town email that you're using, that's personal, that's fine. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna have to, if you get a request, you're gonna have to search your own email for town information. And I'd be happy, we can do for free, and we've done it before, to do a session. We'll come in on any given time and get food, and Jewel and I or somebody from our office presents all this stuff.
You can do that.
That'd be useful, just how it works, how to do to protect against it, and some of the new developments, like Jewel said, the current council was Luke Britt, and he's probably the 5th in 7 years.
Yeah.
My question is, with an email between anybody in the town or on the town board, how much of this has to be a secret? I understand like a lawsuit or something, but what are they gonna try to hide from us? I mean, they never have.
No, nothing.
So, see,
Nothing. It's just a matter of if you want.
It's just, you can't spin your wheels for 2 weeks.
Well, and I think the bigger issue of what we're talking about with the emails is when you have a quorum on it. Because if you have enough people to constitute a meeting of the board, and they communicate through email that way, then that's a violation of the open door law, because you have to advertise public meetings 48 hours in advance. And so, I mean, that's where, and that doesn't hurt the town residents, but it can come back against.
And that's what we
you for
typically
violation
do.
of the-
Yeah. And another issue though
That's
is,
typically what we do.
just from a
And I've done it.
practical sense, is they request all this information, and we have to go through it, and we have to respond to, because if they request it in person or through email, you have to respond within 24 hours of that request. So if they don't, if they mail it in, you have to respond within 7 days. And if it's stuff that's privileged or that it's not responsive, then that costs you money to respond to in time, which is also something.
Well, I guess it's pretty naive on my part, because I always thought a public meeting was one where it was advertised, and that's what constitutes a public meeting, and that everybody's invited. But, and I'm not real savvy about email stuff and all that, but You know, I had no idea that if me and another council member were conversing email, that, you know, it was privy to outside people, mainly I'm talking about the public.
Yeah, and that might not be a meeting, but yeah, other people will be able to request it.
If it's
Those are
just
two different
did,
issues.
it's just-
Okay. I see.
But they can request it, and it's public.
I don't wanna change the subject, but you mentioned the orange group, like a half hour ago when you were talking. And, it sounds like they cost town money and they have violated their contract, so what's going on with that? Like, is there gonna be,
We're gonna have some discussion about that
okay,
tonight,
okay,
yes. We just haven't gotten to that yet.
okay. I just
We
know
are
we
going
mentioned
to-
it earlier.
We are
there,
going to
so-
discuss that, yes. Roberta?
This is just a money question. Based on what Jerry needs, okay, your total cost, bring it up to date, right? Okay? As to what the lawyer would charge for the lawsuit, what's the difference in the figures?
That's a good question, and I just emailed our whole council illegally apparently last week and said that after I get through festival, I'm gonna sit down and work on a detailed budget of what we got right now.
Yeah, what he
So I'm not
needs
gonna
again.
answer that right now, but it is something that is on my radar to do now that we're through festival.
Balance it out,
Right.
see which way you're gonna go spend the least money. And then another thing, I don't know, it might not be legal. Why don't you open this up to the state? Let everybody know, bring a star reporter in, explain your situation and everything, because I'm sure it hadn't been with the paper like it has been, you know.
It was when it first happened.
Yeah, but I
And
mean,
the state,
you know.
the state has been involved.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not putting it in the star and writing about it like some of them guys do. Make everybody else.
And what happens is, media likes the salacious story, right? They want the thing that sells.
Sell paper.
And so, but, I mean,
Yeah, but it might make somebody feel sorry for it. It's another fire.
and what happens is, you know, all towns at the beginning of the year, you have to dedicate or decide who your publication newspaper is, where the announcements are gonna be, and they have the notices of all your public meetings, when your meetings are gonna be held. And that's so that they know that, and they can be there and they can follow what's going on and report on it. And, so it's, I mean, I guess you could start trying to invite people, additional papers to your meetings, but, it is, I'm kind of glad that there's no paper here today, because we're talking about
double-edged sword.
some things that
Yeah.
have gone on. And you made a great point about balancing, you know, what are the costs about getting the fire department up to speed, and what are the costs that are gonna be associated with the litigation. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind there is the cost for getting the department up and running. You know for 100%, if you get this taken care of, that your department's up and running. The costs that are gonna be associated with litigation, while it may be a little bit cheaper, let's say, there's no guarantee that you're going to get back and get the result that you want, which is gonna allow you to get that fire department up and running. And so there's a lot of things, I mean, it's the layers that are gonna be involved in this that you guys are gonna have to make a decision on is gonna be big. I mean,
And it's your call, and like I told you guys before, we obviously work with you on price. I mean, Jewel and I, if it was straight up, we'd be at 800 an hour together right now, but it's not. And so we're kind of talking against our interest here, but it's ultimately your call, and we're willing to work with you on that. But we do what maybe sets us apart is I don't want to pump you up and get 60 grand from you, and then you realize 6 months from now that, oh man, there was some risk associated with this lawsuit. No, you tell you all the bad news first, and then you make your call. That's the whole point.
And just as an ancillary point to that, when we're talking about finances, I think it's, you guys may know this and probably do know this, but I have to talk about this with the municipalities I work with all the time that have a clerk treasurer, is my guess is that Robin's gonna be much more angry about you trying to move funds around or touch things or spend money out of this line item or that line item, because while you are the fiscal body, she's the one that goes to jail if something's wrong in the books. And so it's, And I say that just to remind the council, because I have to say that to every council I go to, because I hear, why don't we just do this? Well, because you can't. Well, why can't we? We've done it in the past. I don't care that you've done it in the past. You got away with it in the past. State Board of Accounts didn't catch it at that time when they did their audit. I mean, they were years behind in doing that. But if they do catch it, you guys will get a slap on the wrist. Your clerk treasurer is gonna be the one to face the major legal issues involved in that.
You're talking about putting it out of different line items into categories that you're not allowed to cross, like MVH, just like you were saying.
Right.
So,
when
you know, I
you're
mean,
talking
that's
about
not,
spending funds.
that ain't, you know, nobody even be looking at that part of the budget, it's not.
Right, and I'm just throwing that out there because I have to talk to all my municipalities about that all the time. Because it doesn't, I mean, in one sense, it doesn't make sense. It's town money, right? And if it's town money, and you guys are the fiscal body, then you should be able to determine and make the best decision for the town of how any of those dollars should be spent. And Indianapolis just doesn't trust, when I say Indianapolis, I'm talking about the State House, they don't trust local municipalities and councils to make the right decision. So then they say, you can only use these funds this way, you can only use these funds this way, you can only use these funds this way.
Well, a lot of them are arrived at the way that the state collects the money too.
It's how they collect the money.
Where it comes from and how they collect it is to, like where they do the local roads and streets and MVH and things like that. The way that money's collected from the taxpayers is how that works. And then the rest of it is off the general fund, is based on property taxes and different things like that.
I think the biggest thing though, when you look at those things, is like this special distribution of the lowest funds, it's where the state needs to make improvement across the state. And they're not gonna come and do it, but they want the local municipalities to do it. Again, that local option income tax money should have been yours to use however you want it. And you can use 25% of it how you want it. 75% is gonna go to pay. So,
Without going into a long discussion, because you've done a real good job explaining how the court system works in a lawsuit. But just to satisfy my curiosity, if we did submit a lawsuit and it got for X amount of money, whatever that is, and we got to the point where you were talking about mediation, or got to that point where the guy goes to us over here, and that lawyer says, is there come a time when he comes into our room and says, look, folks, you've got a real good case. I think the judge is, you know, there's a good possibility he's gonna judge in your favor, or vice versa. Don't go any further because you're not going, you know. What I'm saying is, if you went that far, and we chose at that point to either go on or stop, is that a cost separate, or is it you start from A and you gotta go, you know, the whole cost is from A to Z? Or is, you understand what I'm saying?
I do. So how we work is we bill hourly, so it's gonna be the amount of time that we put into the case.
Okay.
At the time that it gets resolved one way or the other. If you go into mediation unprepared for trial, it's gonna be an unfruitful mediation. So when you get to mediation, you're gonna have gone through, when I say your attorneys, if you choose to go with a different law firm, they have better have gone through every single document, formulated every single argument, taken all the depositions that they want so they know what the testimony is going to be when it goes to trial, form their arguments along that, and that's what you're presenting to the mediator. The mediator's job will be to come in and tell you how bad your case is.
Okay.
Because he's trying to get you to move off your number. And when the mediator goes into the other room, that's the same thing he's gonna tell them. Your case is bad and this is the reason why it's bad. To try and get them to move off their number. It's their, I mean, mediators always say, if neither side is happy at the end of this mediation, I've done my job. And so it's getting you to move off of what you think you are owed to your lowest dollar amount and to their highest dollar amount.
I understand.
And so, but the costs are gonna be associated up to that time, so, and I will tell you, if you choose to go and you're all the way through mediation, you gotta see it all the way through. Because the mediator's not gonna know what the judge is gonna determine. And you've got a large amount in, and if you don't see that through, then you have no chance to recoup, unless they're the ones coming and say, okay, we're just gonna give you this money.
And to pump the brakes on it is harder the longer you're in it. So you file a lawsuit, and within 30 days, you can dismiss it without having to ask anybody about it. Once you get past that point, once the other side shows up, essentially, then you have to either have them agree to dismiss it jointly or ask the judge to dismiss it. So once you're in it until you either resolve it amongst yourselves or a judge rules it.
I see.
Yeah.
Hey, is there a statute of limitations?
For these kind of actions, it's a breach of contract, so it'll be 10 years.
Okay.
I guess I'm saying all that this evening. All this information, conversation we've had. Do we wanna make a decision tonight? Take a vote on whether to proceed with the lawsuit or whether to not. I mean, what's your thoughts?
And if I can make one statement about that real quickly.
Yes.
And I know you're probably not gonna like what I'm gonna say, but Robin just said that she was going to look at the numbers to come up with a determination as to how much it's gonna be for the department to get up on its feet, and what that budgetary cost is gonna be, and compare that to what the legal budget is, or what, I mean, the legal budget, it's a shot in the dark. It's what, from our experience, this is how much time is taken to resolve matters like this. So it could be well below that, who knows? So that's just a guesstimate. But I think once Robin comes up with that figure as to what the department's going to be, then you'll have all the information to go forward.
I think it's a good point.
Well,
And
don't
then
you
our-
wanna compare the list too of what the inventory was before, and see if we can still recoup that before we go into a lawsuit?
Yes.
If we can get our hands on that.
Yeah.
We also have a time factor involved here. We have to make a decision on what we're going to do for our ALS service prior to January 1.
And they're already inquiring, right?
Correct. So that's something to think about. I mean,
And see, I need to know too, because when I go to complete those run orders or those run cards, because I've got to put that in that's part of it. I have to have that done by November the 1st.
so Jerry, what are our options currently on ALS provider? Do you have a feel
Well,
for that?
We've reached out to Cicero, I don't think there's any interest there.
No.
Would be utilize Jackson again, or look at a plan B, go outside, go a private, but again, private's gonna cost you. So, there's a lot of fire departments across the state that doesn't run any type of medical, or EMS, and I like to think, I hate to say this, but their chiefs are probably the smartest chiefs in the state, because EMS causes issues. But we gotta have it. You have to have it.
We did. We have to have it for our citizens.
Yes.
Well, for our
See,
police
come
police
up.
protection too, they've said they will
They
not
would
come up
charge.
here
It would be expensive.
Cause they're up in
if we don't have ALS.
That's correct.
And I think if you talk to Tipton, the problem with they have up there, and they have it, the county provides, or they pay SEALS ambulance service, I believe. And then their backup is Tipton Fire, and then they have Cicero Township as a backup. But their medical, or their ALS services, I think is provided by SEALS, I believe. Very, very expensive,
Looked into seals last year.
very expensive.
There's one other option, I'm gonna throw this out. I mean, Jerry and I have had some conversation about this. This is something I have not done. I came on this council 2.5 years ago. January of 2015, I believe, was when I took office. The territory was well underway when I came here. I knew very little, knew nothing about the territory. Looking back, had I known the situation with the territory and all this, honestly, I would have never run. because it's been a very tough thing to deal with. I've had a lot of heartaches. I've had a lot of, well, just sitting at this table tonight, a lot of hurt feelings. But one thing I haven't done that I should have went and talked to the trustee myself and tried to work through this problem. But that's never been the case. And that's one thing that, with your blessing, I would like to do. I would like to go meet with her. Jerry and I have talked. I'd like to sit down with her, Jerry and I, and discuss these issues and see if we can get anywhere just with a conversation. I know that may seem unrealistic, but it's never been done. There's no one from this council that's ever done that. And as far as a lawsuit, I'll speak my mind tonight, getting the facts together. I'm not in favor of a lawsuit. Just for the expense, just for what these gentlemen have explained tonight, the time and the hours, not minutes, hours that's going to be involved in this. I think by the end of the day, the money that we'll spend is going to be far greater than what we stand to gain. Now, I could be wrong. That's my opinion. It's my 2 cents.
Fred, I agree with that. I think any money that we're gonna throw at this it should be thrown at our department and not at a lawsuit. Again, my 2 cents, but my opinion.
What do we expect to gain by talking to Chris Miller? By that, I mean, are we at a place now where if she meets us halfway and said, okay, maybe I can give you guys a better deal than what you got in the past on the fire territory, you know, if she's willing to do that, are we willing to sign up for that, or is the board in favor of hoping maybe she'll give some of our equipment back without any qualms, or, I mean, I don't know, Fred.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, my first concern is providing service to this community. ALS service to this community, and I don't care win, lose, or draw. I mean,
Absolutely.
we've been beat up over this.
That's priority.
We've been mistreated over this. Andy, you know as well as anybody. John, you know as well as anybody. You guys were involved. You were in it from the get-go. You've seen, pardon my French, the screwing that this town's taken over that.
And I've sat in meetings with her and I've
And
said,
I
you
know.
know, that's, you know,
I
I've
know.
talked to her, I've tried to get our stuff back, I've tried to get her to settle with us, and, you know, I don't
And
have a
it's-
bit of problem with you going down there if you think, I mean,
And I
I
never
personally
had-
don't think it's gonna do a bit of good, but if you're willing
You
to
know.
try that, I mean, it's, you know, it's just one more attempt to
You know, I
get
came
something
on
back.
here, and you recall, John, there was a meeting that I sat in 2 months into my term where they wanted you to step down
Absolutely.
from the territory.
And why was that? Because I was the only one to speak up.
Yeah,
And ask
Absolutely.
questions.
you were a thorn in the inner side.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I stood my ground and said, no, I'm not comfortable in doing that. And you know, that day. And, well, we all know what happened. They pulled out. Here we sit today. We've had to contract with her. Thank goodness that we have Jerry to try to put the pieces back together and moving forward. But I'm just being open and honest. That's my true feelings.
Like I said, I think you guys want to have a meeting with her and all, I don't personally feel it'll get you anywhere, but, you know, I think, you know.
I don't know if we could get her to offer in exchange for not suing her, and I don't know, I'll look at our attorneys tonight and ask if that's a viable thing to present to her, that we don't want to go to court, we don't want to spend the money to do this, if we could meet somewhere in the middle to keep from doing that. maybe possibly offer us ALS service for a year. At a reduced
And that-
rate,
And that may.
or something, you know, her term is up, I believe,
When?
Yeah.
2 years, I believe.
She's still got 2 more years?
I believe she does. She took office when these guys did.
What, I got a question for the attorneys. If we meet with them or try to get some kind of meeting set up and we still don't get anywhere, is there a statute of limitations on filing a theft report if we go through the police department instead of a lawsuit and file that our equipment was stolen? If we get that inventory with all the equipment and the serial numbers and everything, it would be necessary to file a theft report. And then turn it into our insurance company, and let our insurance company get involved with this. As that we're gonna turn in a claim for property that had gotten stolen, we want it replaced through our insurance.
It's been a while since I was a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for 9 years, but I would have to go back and look at the criminal statute of limitations, so I just don't have to deal with the criminal statute of limitations anymore. What I can tell you is, though, that the further away that you get from the incident itself, the harder it is for any law enforcement officer to get the information it needs to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And so, but, you know, in order to turn it into your insurance, you will need that theft report to be
Right.
filed. So, I mean,
You remember, Johnny, I don't know if you still have it, I'm gonna see if I do. Chris Miller sent an email out on those air packs.
I've got it, I had a copy and I thought I meant to bring it to give to Jerry.
You want to go to a meeting, Fred, take the email where she says if we disband, we keep our air packs. It was in an email.
I've got it.
From her.
I meant to bring it with me because Jerry had asked me, you know.
and those are
if I
the
had
things
it.
that you can take, and at the end of the day,
Yes.
you're not gonna be able to make an agreement finalized.
No.
You're gonna be able to get something offered maybe that then this council will have to then take action on to resolve. But the threat of litigation sometimes is a pretty big hammer. And, I mean, we're in a case right now that's our only hammer that we're using,
Yeah.
because the facts aren't on our side.
Like I said, I've wanted to do that from the get-go, but I never have.
And I don't know that, I mean, the only thing that hurts is that it's gonna be a delay, right? If there's an intent of this council to move forward today, then it would delay the moving forward of that. But if the intent of this council is to wait until, to get additional information, then it's not I don't see what it would hurt. And it may result in a benefit. I don't think that anybody, and then I'm talking about just what I've heard through this meeting. I don't know that anybody has any anticipation that it's gonna result in a good way, but it's not gonna hurt your position.
Yeah, I think we should take advantage of all our options, but at the same time, I'm agreeing with John, and I think Chris Miller is just gonna see this as a sign of weakness on our part, and, but I mean, I think it's a fine idea that somebody goes over and talks to her, you know, and try to get some kind of resolve, but I think it's pretty futile myself. Who knows, maybe it's a good day, you know, she might be in a good mood that day, knowing Chris Miller, you know.
Are you guys familiar with the state statute involving territories and their dissolve? With the language about when a territory dissolves, what that is as far as dividing?
Yeah, we've been through that, we have my letters on it, we try to pull it all together, and we try to restart a territory with White River, you have to do it in a certain amount of time, and the dissolution, though, is controlled by the interlocal agreement. So the interlocal agreement has a way for the territory to dissolve, supported by the statute, but there's nothing that says you get a third, you get a third, you get a third.
Just the debt,
Pardon?
the debt.
What about the debt?
If there's debt, it's supposed to be divided by the number
Well, again,
of units in the,
What's that?
That hasn't happened, so we're kinda like,
Yeah, thank goodness it hasn't happened. So that's part of what you entered into. It's a contract, and like any other
if the, I'm
entity,
just
you
asking,
enter into the contract.
if the debt is divided by the number of people in the unit, why wouldn't the riches be divided by the number of people in the unit?
Because the statutes aren't always written to be logical.
And then you agreed to a different scenario.
So it's,
See, that's what frustrates me, Manny, about this whole thing. I mean, there was a state police and I guess I can say this in a public meeting. There was a state police investigation. State Board of Accounts came in, they audited her books. They turned it over to the Indiana State Police. The Indiana State Police turned it over to the Hamilton County Prosecutor. Nothing happened. Now, last year, or just in the past few months, the trustee was named Hamilton County Republican Woman of the Year. So, that's what we're up against. And that's why I feel as strongly as I feel about not spending money on this. Because the handwriting's kind of on the wall.
Pre-existing conditions.
You know,
Well, I
let's
know
get the
when
inventory, you know.
They had all those public meetings, you know, about the fire territory. It was like black and white. Atlanta was getting screwed.
Yes.
Didn't matter what
Right.
anybody said or did. We knew before anything.
Exactly.
And that's the reason it hurts so bad to this day.
Yes.
And they took everything they wanted from us, and that was it, and then left us.
So,
No, they didn't leave us. They use us to subsidize their department that they can't afford,
Exactly.
just like they do Arcadia. Because
Exactly.
without Atlanta and Arcadia funneling money to them, they can't run their department. Here, we'll cut your throat, give me your wallet while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Jerry, are you gonna help me with your half of the,
I can't. Just let me know what you want. Need.
so you let me know what you want and how much it's gonna
Well,
cost.
That's a two-way street.
When did you say the limitation on legal action? When was the date on that? You
on
said
theft or on legal,
on legal.
10 years.
10 years.
10 years?
It's a breach of contract.
And on theft, it was,
I would have to look up
We'd
the
have to
criminal
look it
code.
up.
I just don't,
He didn't have
I don't look at the-
specific time, but,
that title anymore, so.
you know, Jerry's sitting here tonight, you know, we're looking at a pretty tight deadline on.
I have
on
a
this.
2-month window here, but
Yes, and that's something that I'm concerned with as well, because he has things that he has to line up just to get our department
I just,
legal.
I guess what I don't wanna see is, I know after last year's festival, again, the intent was to keep the door, open the doors,
Yes.
and it didn't happen. And I don't wanna see that, I really don't. But it, and I hate to say this, but it could be, I mean, it could,
Well, yeah, I mean, all of this that we've discussed tonight isn't going to happen in a.
You should be
in
getting
30
some
days.
kind of reduction, because you're not gonna contract with her to fire.
Right,
true.
I don't know what that is, but it should be something.
See, and I don't know what they charge for per run, but then, well, anyway, so,
well, I mean, it's a place to start.
yeah.
And, I've had a couple of conversations with the new fire chief down there as well. Not that I'm keeping anything from you guys, and I want you to understand that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about Orange. I do talk to people, and I don't always share everything that I talk about, so.
It's hard for you to do that
Well.
when we're not in a meeting, if you cannot.
Opportunities arise. I had an opportunity this past weekend to have an hour-long conversation with him. Wasn't planned, it happened. We talked about a lot of things. I think, had he been on board prior, I think things would have been a lot different. I don't think we would have been sitting here tonight having this discussion. He's a career firefighter.
He seems genuine.
He's I feel like a man of integrity. He's in it for the right reasons. And he has some struggles as well. So.
Whether he has any
that's-
sway with his boss.
So that's why I felt fairly strongly about going and talking to her. So. Any other discussion on fire territory? Questions? I know we've taken a lot of time, but it's been good time.
Well, I would suggest, since you want to meet with Chris Miller and Jerry, you and Jerry, I would recommend to go ahead and do that, and then come back to see what the outcome of that is, and then at the next meeting.
Before the next meeting.
Yes,
You
we
can
have
also
to.
call a special meeting if you need to act on 1 or 2 issues. There's nothing preventing you from doing that, you just have to notice it the regular way,
48 hours.
48 hours.
48 hours.
So if you meet with her tomorrow, you can have another meeting next week.
Okay. Appreciate that. Okay. All right, let's move on to Orange baseball. Have some discussion about that tonight. John, I read your email pertaining to Orange. And I know we have several issues with them.